But
Okay. Leela says she has to leave, but anyway, this discussion. I am Shelton Bumgar. Our guests right now are Walt Spence. Obviously our only guest right now is Walt Spence. Walt says he is against Donald Trump, and we're just gonna have a little discussion, a little debate about Donald Trump, and we have someone in the chat room who apparently is a supporter of Donald Trump who does not want to jump in and tell us why. But if you were watching this on YouTube, then you can't really see what he has to say, and I will try to impart to you what he is saying. Walt, tell us, what is your opinion of Donald Trump, and what can we expect should he become president?
It's really hard to say what you can expect when he becomes president, because he's going to win. I hate to tell you, it's just, who do you think's going to win right now? Because Bernie's not going to have enough, he's not going to have enough delegates behind him to get the nod. That's the only way that he's going to have any competition, or a third party run, which I think that, didn't Bernie say that he wasn't going to run third party?
I don't know.
He would have to still get 10% of the vote in polls across, an average, in order to even be able to get into the debate. So that's the problem, really, quite honestly, with the system the way it is. Third parties are, basically locked out. So basically, like, what do I think of Trump? I think that there's a whole lot of rhetoric that goes around him being, like Hitler.
Yeah.
And we need to tone down the rhetoric as it is, because we need to focus on policy, because his biggest gaping hole right now is the policy discussion. And as long as he gets away with talking in sound bites, the more he's going to be able to get, the kind of momentum that he has. I think we have a caller here.
Yeah. And, when a leading politician, person for candidacy or presidency is still upset about a quip about his length of his fingers from 1989, I think it is, and he discusses that nearly 30 years later on national television. You say what you will about the man's policies, but does that really indicate someone has the demeanor to be president of the United States? What do you think about that?
At the end of the day, like, let me just take a step back for a second. Like, when we discuss policy, people get bored. People have the attention span of a gnat now.
Yes.
So really, quite honestly, I know why he's positioning himself the way he is. He doesn't have to discuss policy right now, so the longer he doesn't have to make a stance on something other than these short sound bites, the better off it is for him, speaking to frustrations that people have. Now, that's the one thing that I will say, that I think that he is like Hitler, in the sense that he's able to tap into the frustrations of the American people at a time where things aren't economically great. And just like it was, when Hitler came into the German Workers' Party. But, honestly, him as a candidate, being a businessman, I think that that's a little bit of a disingenuous argument, because, the teardown that John Oliver had of him was pretty straightforward. It pulled no punches. Granted that some of it was a little over the top, but it's no further over the top than some of the claims that Trump makes. But, do we need a businessman as president? That's the question I want to pose to you.
Now, okay, to me, that is a little bit besides the point, because it's all about his demeanor. Mm-hmm. It's all about his demeanor and the era in which he would usher in. He may be an excellent, which he isn't. He may be an excellent businessman, and maybe even if he was, then that could be something you could use to give him some credibility as a potential president. But I just don't see him being. His demeanor is such that he is not worthy of the office.
So, did you read the article that came out from The Guardian that said the 13 Trump supporters or something like that haven't even revealed to other people why they support him. That was pretty interesting. One of the people that responded in email to the author actually said that one of her siblings works for Trump or has worked for Trump in a certain capacity, and that the image that he portrays in the media versus the way he actually is are two different things. He actually is a caring person. What are your thoughts on that? Could he be a persona? Is what I'm getting at. Like,
what this is my issue. My issue is, I think that if he became president, it would be the biggest bait and switch in American history, in the sense that his actual administration would be pretty moderate, and probably the actual policy implementation would probably be pretty meh. But the era in which he would usher in would be so balls out crazy and so insane, and and people would be like, oh my God. And then that doesn't even begin to address the neo-fascists and the Nazis and the militia people that would be like, the president's one of us. And they would I'm actually afraid that people like me, who are kind of freaky weirdos in some respect, would be the people that they would go, you know what, you're not really what we want in this country of ours. Come with us. You know, and that's and it wouldn't be the president, it would be the people associated with him that would be doing the business that would scare me.
Right. So you're basically saying that you feel like he's going to tear into the social fabric of America even deeper than we already are.
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that. Okay, and now, Stephen, now we got ourselves a conversation. If Stephen can tell us. Okay, Stephen's got the
if I may, can I opine on that one thing? Though?
Yes, you may.
I feel like we have more division right now with Obama in office, and I did not anticipate that after the first election nor the re-election. I thought that we were at a point in America where we could, I'm not saying or trying to placate and say like just because there's a black president that racism doesn't exist. But I thought that we were coming to a point where, you know, I'm guessing America, like the thought that I had was like America doesn't see color as much as it used to. But what I was discounting was, were people voting for this because of the man's ethnicity as much as what he stood for? That's something that I hadn't considered before, because, you know, we like him, he's cool, he's hip, that kind of thing. Like, I don't really know what he stands for, but I like the idea of having a black president. Was that at play? I don't know. These are the questions that I have myself.
Okay, those are all very pertinent questions, but I am very keenly interested in what Stephen has to say. Stephen, what do you think about all of this?
I think that people are afraid that the rhetoric, as you call it, the rhetoric that Donald Trump brings to the table, is that he will do what he says he's going to do, and that scares a lot of people. Now, I'm not going to turn this into like, a sabotage job like Fox News. I think we all can agree last night, Fox News turned that debate into a circus last night. There was no.
I actually didn't get a chance to watch it, unfortunately.
I think Ted Cruz and the governor from Cleveland or Ohio, excuse me, they were the only two that kind of kept their head on straight. I think Trump let his emotions get best of him as somebody that is supporting Trump, and I'll explain why I support Trump. I think Rubio stepped to a whole new low because it's almost like watching pro wrestling. You know, Rubio's figuring, well, maybe if I start acting like Trump, more people will like me. But I think the biggest thing with Trump that really, keeps me as an entrepreneur is the fact that he's a businessman. The fact that when he says something and he's got the influence, I mean, let's look at it here in social media. Let's look at it. We always look up to the influencers, right? We always look up to the people that we claim are the square pegs in the round holes, so to speak. The Joel Combs of this world, right? Well, Donald Trump is just that person. So when Donald Trump says, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to make the IRS disappear, and I'm going to make wages go up. I'm going to make better jobs for America. I believe him. And that's hard when you come to a politician. I mean, let's face it, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, they're all liars, right? They say what you want to hear to get them in. You got to ask yourself the question, what's in it for Donald Trump? Because he has nobody backing him to pull his strings. So one of two things is going to happen. He gets elected, gets assassinated, and the vice president takes over.
Oh, my God.
I'm just saying, no, but think about it. Because people aren't going to like what he has to do or say. Or you're going to get the minority of people who are living off the system that really hate this guy because he's going to make people work again. And it's not going to be easy to get on the system anymore. And I think that's the biggest thing that I personally see with Donald Trump coming into it. I don't want to be under Bernie Sanders. I think he's a little bit better than Hillary. I would, if I had to choose, if you guys put a gun to my head and said, choose between Hillary or Sanders, I would choose Sanders because I think Hillary's just going to be a repeat of what Obama did, only worse. I agree with this gentleman, Walt, when he said that Obama has really caused a race war in the United States. And in my opinion, I think Hillary and Bernie are going down that same path based on what I'm seeing. Can't always believe the hype and the tabloids and everything like that, but just like Fox News last night trying to say to Trump that his university had a D rating, and he's like, yeah, but that's been removed. What do you know, they were setting it up for ratings. They wanted Trump to explode. So it was entertaining. I mean, look at, you got you talking about it. So
yeah.
That's just, I don't want to come across, because I know a lot of people think Trump supporters are mindless morons. I think, Shelton, you just kind of said that low information voters are the Clinton or the Trump vote. I tend to think the opposite way. I tend to think those that vote in Bernie Sanders are the low information voters.
That's fine. I was just
I don't want socialism in America. We've seen it does not work overseas. You know, these you got to look at what you got to look at what these people are standing for, right? How many of you guys would like to have better jobs, better income? I'm just sick of politicians, man. If this guy is going to call it straight down the middle and not give you a line of jargon, so be it. Let him do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, let me interject for a second. What? Given what you just said, what if he, as I suggest, is a pretty moderate Republican, center-right politician, and yet at the same time, a lot of unsavory individuals see his election as a opportunity to sort of stir the pot? Would you feel betrayed in the sense that he had not done all his radical, implementation of the Trump
revolution? What do you call radical? What do you call radical?
About the KKK and David Duke, or are you talking?
Yeah. I'm talking about like what if like the KKK, David Duke, militiamen, people said like that said, wait a second, Donald Trump's president of the United States, and he's sort of indicated that he's kind of like sympathetic to our needs. What if those people start to like stir the pot? What happens then?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of stirring of the pot currently too. I mean, look at what happened in Ferguson. Look at what happened. I mean, all of this stuff, like, we need to have a real conversation on. Like, we can't worry about what's going to happen next. Like, we have to vote based on who's the best candidate for the job, in my opinion.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm worried about the social fabric, just like you. But at the same time, like, these things are going to play out no matter who's president. It may be staved off for a little while, but this is a national conversation that we need to have, really, over race.
Walt, are you Republican or are you voting Democrat?
I'm not either or. I'm more libertarian than anything. But
I'm a libertarian too. But when Rand Paul dropped out, it was kind of like, okay, now what? Right?
Same here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, see. What about, so looking at the Republicans, you got Cruz. I mean, honestly, I would be happy if Cruz, Trump, or Rubio got in. I don't agree with a lot of things any of them say, but they all support the Second Amendment.
There's nobody in the middle. There's no third guy.
There's not. It's right, one extreme or the other, right? I'm not your typical Trump supporter, so let's just get that out there in the open. I am a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I'm a firm believer in these guys upholding the Constitution, as, like you said, a libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
And the Republican Party, honestly, is the only ones that I'm seeing that, at least openly, is stating that they're going to support that.
Mm-hmm. The problem that I have is Trump is the candidate.
Sorry, the phone rang. The phone rang. I'm sorry.
Like we were just talking, he was just talking about like supporting Constitution, Second Amendment rights, stuff like that, being a libertarian. The problem that I have with supporting Trump outwardly, without him winning the nomination first and then having a moment to think about it and seeing who runs third party, is that, I don't really believe that the man will stick to the Constitution and adhere by it himself. He has too big of an ego not to really stir up executive orders to get his will passed through. That's the only issue that I have now. With that being said, he has slammed Obama on executive action during debates, during stumps. So he couldn't come out and do that in the first term. So as far as who I would support out of the field, the closest thing is Ted Cruz, and that makes me like I have to hold my nose to even think about,
No, I agree with that. What do you guys think about all of them? All of them have basically stated, and even you, Shelton. I mean, because up till recently, you didn't really have a job, so you were forced to take this Obamacare or get, penalized.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that should be jammed down the American public's throats.
Mm-hmm. I
don't think they should treat it like that. If you don't have health care, we're going to tax you out the wazoo. There's a reason people don't have health care. They can't afford it. So let's tax the American people.
Well, they can't afford
because they can't afford to have it.
They can't afford the current system either because the premium, the co-pays and the premiums are so high. And, basically, like one of my friends who has Obamacare, they would have to pay, I think it's $5,000 out of pocket for anything to even go into effect. So it's really in name only. You really
had a lot of people who were uninsured before, and now those people are insured but can't use their insurance. I don't know, unless it's really catastrophic, in which case they're not going to be denied care anyway. What does it matter?
Well, and my health care, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, so I have really good health care. I've got really good deductible. I'm fortunate for that. But see, when I look at a candidate, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my kids' future, right? Because this all sets into motion my kids in the next 10 years. And I understand where Obama was coming from. I'm not an Obama supporter, but I understand what he was trying to do. I think it was implemented wrong. I think that the whole process, it shouldn't be jammed. Like if JS decides that he doesn't want insurance, why should he be, because maybe I'm not saying he can't afford it, but maybe he can't afford it. Why should he then be taxed $2,000, on top of the fact that he can't afford to have this insurance and have that jammed down his throat, make him look like some kind of criminal?
The reason why they had to do it was because of pre-existing condition and all that stuff. Being able to cover the uninsured or uninsurable at the time. That was the reasoning behind it.
But isn't the law of the land that even hospitals, they can't turn you away if you need to be if you need attention? You come in there with a gunshot wound
it's not that easy, because what happens from that point, the hospital puts that as a tax write-off, so we pay for it in the end too. So
so now we're getting double tax. We're getting the Obamacare tax, and we're getting the hospital tax, or the taxes that we do pay.
And on top of it, because of these new laws, these things are entrenched. So the ability to actually create any kind of true healthcare reform has now been made doubly more difficult.
So let's go back to the subject at hand. JS, what do you think about Donald Trump and his popularity? And
well, here's the thing. Actually, when I was a lad in New York, I knew his father, Fred. The interesting thing is most people who follow Donald Trump thinks he's a self-made man, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. He's lost more money for more people than just about anybody in the history of the United States. His father, Fred Trump, basically owned every politician there was in New York, and he created low-income, high-rise housing, also known as the projects. Donald Trump was left a legacy, and he was also left a system by his father because his father was afraid he would screw it up and blow it and all that kind of stuff. So he couldn't really get his hands on money and things of that nature or whatever. But if you look at the value of what he was left, the connections and everything else, it's easy to see. Give me $5 million and I'll make 10. It's a lot harder to make $5 million when you only have $50. But be that as it may, I just don't like many things about his character. He's not being embraced so much as the status quo is being rejected. And from that standpoint, I guess there's this little piece of me that's enjoying this because I hope something is going to come out of it. This is absolutely amazing when the Republican Party is basically making statements like, we'd rather support Clinton than, when I say the Republican Party, I mean
Right.
the people who run it. We'd rather support Clinton than Trump. And they're saying that, laughingly, but not too far from the truth. So here's a guy who could potentially wind up getting all these delegates and wind up having to go into an open convention. An open convention. That hasn't happened, I think, since 1823 or something.
But I see Donald Trump in this race the kind of the way that we saw Dennis Rodman first introduced into the NBA. Everybody thought he was a freak. Everybody thought but he was a great player. He went with the Bulls to the championship for 3 years in a row or whatever it was, because he was different. And I think that's what scares people, because Donald Trump is not a politician. And yeah, I mean, everybody's made some mistakes. I mean, we could dig through everybody's past and we could go right down the line of all the candidates. I'm not looking at these guys' past. I want that shock value. I want somebody in there different that thinks differently. That's what I want. I don't care if it's Ted Cruz. I don't care if it's,
I think it would work well
Marco
if it was
Rubio or any of them.
But
What's that?
I think if it was a movie of the week, it might be an interesting story. But if he tried to pull those shenanigans with, these individuals who are in other countries that, if they're feeling like they have nothing to lose, there are missiles pointed at everybody in this world, and I'm not appreciative of politics. I'm not appreciative of the way things are done. And quite frankly, it might not be a bad thing for major bombs to go off in this country because we don't have the money to rebuild the infrastructure. We don't have jobs for people. And that certainly has helped other countries. Think about other places that have been in war. But it's crazy. When you break it down and there's no emotions involved and you start hearing the talk, because I've been there, and they say things like, well, something, the military-industrial complex doesn't work anymore because we're not killing off enough young men. And seriously, the reason why did it work? Why did a military-industrial complex
Well, I mean,
work?
let's face it. Bill Gates said that. Bill Gates said, if it was up to me, I'd eradicate 1/3 or 2/3 of the Earth's population and let only the billionaires and millionaires repopulate it. So that way,
When did he say that?
the world would be a lot smarter.
Yeah, when did he say that?
You can Google it. Google it up.
He was like, when we talk about
that
when he's talking about I think specifically the question that was asked was about the limited resources here on Earth, but that's beside the point. Like, yeah.
Anyway, let's go back to Donald Trump, guys. Okay, so the issue for me, guys, is I am worried for this republic of ours, because again, let me say again, it's not so much what Donald Trump his administration might do, because I think that if push came to shove and he became president, he'd be co-opted just like they all are. But it's what the era that he would bring in, the idiocracy that he would bring in, that is what
define that. Define the idiocracy that you're talking about. Define that.
When I got to keep my cool.
It's cool, man.
Well, no. Listen. I'm not trying to. Listen. I'm not one of those guys. I thought this was a friendly conversation. I'm not pushing Trump one way or the other.
It is a friendly.
But explain.
It is a friendly.
If you're going to say idiocracy,
I'm feeling
explain it.
my energy getting a little riled up here, and I don't want that to happen. That's why
fine. I mean, I'm not going to I gotta do a show here in about a half hour, so I just kind of keep
Okay.
on here.
Anyway, out of respect for you in the discussion, I'm trying to keep my cool.
Okay.
Okay. The issue is when a major political candidate on national television discusses the length of his fingers and insinuates that his genitalia is more than adequate. That is not the type of person I want to be the president of the United States. That, by definition, I feel is idiocracy.
Okay. What about
That's President Comanche.
Well,
what about our current
maybe it's not
president who's saying
distinguishing-
take guns from American law-abiding citizens, but he's giving them to people overseas in the drug cartel? That's idiocracy if you really want to go there. Or how about he's saying, let's take the guns away from the American people, but we saw what happened in Paris when people don't have guns. That's idiocracy.
Well, he wasn't saying taking guns away.
Think about that one.
He wasn't saying to take guns away from people. What he was saying was that the process by which a person can obtain a gun is too easy.
JS, who were the killers that were in San Bernardino? And let me remind everybody that California is got one of the strictest gun laws in this country.
Yeah.
Who got them? The criminals. That's who got them.
Well,
not law-abiding citizens.
You can buy the
background
guns in
checks wouldn't have
Texas.
helped.
You can buy the guns in Texas, throw them in the back of your car, and just drive them to California.
Obama's giving them to the drug cartel and the criminals, man.
Yeah, you're talking about the operation.
Fast and Furious, and that I'm not going to argue. You're right. I'm not going to argue that.
All I'm
that
saying is your definition of idiocracy. We have it now. We have idiocracy right now.
It's beyond that. Idiocracy is people in Iowa running around so that they can have 29 people standing next to a candidate so that individual can move further, and with little pieces of paper in their hand in the computer age. This is idiocracy. Idiocracy is when Republicans try to block poor Democrats from getting to the polls so that their votes don't count. This is idiocracy. Idiocracy is when 14 people essentially in the world control 40% of the world's wealth. That's crazy.
There you go.
This is idiocracy.
And
Idiocracy
the voting
has been
system
around for a long time.
Money.
So,
well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was trying to get out of Shelton when I asked him to define idiocracy, because maybe he was going to define it differently than the way I looked at it. The way I looked at it is exactly how I explained it. We've seen that.
Is
Look
that
how
we
George
still build
Bush-
roads
George
with
Bush did it.
tar. We still build roads with tar. We have had 500 ways of better building roads for years and years and years, and we still build them with tar. This is idiocracy.
I'm not
For me,
denying that.
idiocracy. For me, idiocracy is when celebrity trumps political, no pun intended, trumps political experience for
Really?
the
I
candidacy.
got two
Yeah,
words
well-
for you then. Jack Kennedy.
Right. Obama
Jack Kennedy was a
basically
senator,
The same
though.
thing. He was more celebrity.
It was both of those men had experience in the
If you
government.
read a book,
Both,
read
and
a
they were
book called
celebrities. Yeah.
Influence, written by Robert Cialdini in 1982, you'll look at it. There are 6 rules of influence. Likability is number 1.
Mhm.
Look at the people out there that are doing well today. They're morons, but they're young and they're good looking. Come on.
Right.
Well, and I think that's what people want today. They don't want a president that's going to do the job. They want a president that's popular, and everybody falls into peer pressure. I've seen so many things around the internet where people have asked questions. They've done it on the Trump side and they've done it on the Bernie Sanders side about socialism. They're like, put it down. And people were mindlessly signing petitions because they just don't know enough. They don't care. They're not watching it. And I'll be honest. I know this is a pivotal point in history, at least for my generation, the way I feel. Because it's either... I really do. I believe that. And I think this election is really going to change the course, as Shelton, to kind of piggyback what he said. I only want the right man for the job in there. And I look at Hillary, who's being investigated by the FBI. I look at Bernie Sanders, who I don't even think will make it through a term. The stress is going to kill him. And I don't like socialism. So I don't care if he's what do you call it, a democratic socialist.
If the only thing they were able to come up with against Hillary Clinton after putting under a microscope was the fact that she used a home computer for business email.
She broke the law. That's the point. It doesn't matter. She broke the law.
They all break the law.
Well,
What about Benghazi?
I will.
Yeah.
I will admit that Hillary Clinton has a bad case of the Nixons. But as I keep saying, I'd much rather have a crook than a fascist for president.
Well,
Okay, well,
I'd much rather
Nixon had to resign from office because he was eavesdropping against a political candidate. When Bush came into office, he created the Homeland Security Act, which then made that legal for a president to eavesdrop against his candidate, a candidate.
Yeah, they're all criminals.
I could go down the line for as long as I've been.
Is even more concerning than Hillary herself. We could go all the way back to Vince Foster. Okay, so
That's right.
But the issue for
Ronald Reagan was
guys,
the last president that we had that was decent, in my opinion.
What about? Okay, that's
my opinion. That's my opinion.
But he did sell arms to Iran and then use the proceeds.
He did get the trains to run on time in Italy. I'll give you that.
I understand that every president's going to do something that we're not going to like. I mean, we could go back in history and see, freaking Abraham Lincoln had slaves. I mean, come on.
No, he didn't. He did not. Abraham Lincoln did not own slaves.
Well, I do.
He never owned slaves.
Okay,
that's a fact. Okay. That is that.
Okay.
So okay,
Okay.
But here,
do you want me to look it up right now and give you a link?
It doesn't even matter. We were talking about.
Here's the thing.
My point is, you could go back through and go back through history and say,
you're Gilberting.
I didn't like this about.
Yeah, you're staticky a little bit there, Steven.
You're
frozen.
Refresh.
Refresh, Steven, if you can.
Yeah, no. With Trump, honestly, all right. If you had Trump versus Hillary, Shelton, you're pulling the lever for Hillary, is what you're saying. A proven criminal.
Yeah, I'd much rather have Nixon than Mussolini.
Here's an interesting thing, though, when you think about Trump and where things. So I work in advertising, and years ago I was introduced to this whole concept that Johnny Carson with the Tonight Show had, which is his greatest gift is that people felt totally comfortable with him in their bedrooms.
Like Jimmy Fallon. Yeah.
And so same thing with Jimmy Fallon now. So Donald Trump, as a celebrity, as a person on television, has this great ability where he is welcomed into people's living rooms and into their bedrooms. When many people see President Obama on television, it often means that the program they want to watch is being preempted so that President Obama can come on. So they're looking at him as an intrusion. They're looking at him as an unwanted visitor into their homes. And there is this deep mentality that sort of happens. So it's just kind of interesting when you sort of look at these kinds of things as what are their implications and how do they affect people mentally or psychologically.
Speaking from a libertarian viewpoint, my hope for Obama was that he was going to stick to the Constitution and do the things that he talked about, since, he's been involved in, a professorship around that. And he, talked about, kind of slammed Bush for the Iraq War, slammed him for the Patriot Act. And the only thing that, personally on a policy standpoint, he did close Guantanamo. That's a plus. But now we have more off-grid black sites now that we have no control over or oversight over. We also have more drone warfare than ever. I mean, the fact that this is continuing and expanding is really concerning to me. I had no problem with the man personally.
No.
As a politician.
Let me interject.
Yeah, it is.
The question I have is, of the candidates now we have, who would you believe, I don't know if I even want to include Trump into this, but of the candidates available, which one do you like? Which one do you dislike the least? Which one is actually would be a good president?
Here you go again, the whole thing about the president. And I think we failed to understand that probably in this last administration, the Supreme Court really had more to do with major decisions and major things happening than the president did. And this is where we have a scenario or situation. In California right now, individual cities are trying to create a 21 and over for purchasing cigarettes and vapor and so on and so forth. And it's being challenged because the state says 18 and over. Now, what happens if the federal government decides they want to come in and they want to make it a 21 and over and all that kind of stuff? So you have you have this the two major factions, and the one is, I don't see the benefits of strong centralized government, Washington, D.C., ruling individual states whose needs and wants and desires are all very, very different. You wind up with all kinds of scenarios and things such as NIMBY, not my backyard, and wind up with other things like pork barreling and all that. And this comes from probably more to do with the Supreme Court. If you push that off and you give the states greater responsibilities and things like that, you would have a scenario. And I'm not speaking from my personal, this is what I want or this is what I need, but speaking from a place where I think we move forward, and that is then the states act that way. So you know what? Maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing, and I know I'm going to get hate mail for this, if there were two or three states that did not allow for legalized same-sex marriage, and that would be places where people who were of that mindset would feel comfortable going and living and being in. I haven't researched that enough, but I'm just saying this is when you get the decentralized government, you get more of that local government responding to the needs of its people.
Right. And what you just spoke on is kind of the problem of why we have this underlying issue with the social fabric that Shelton's talking about. Because if you go coast to coast, it's a completely different country. In all phases of life. Like if you go from the South, let's say you fly from Birmingham to Portland. Good Lord, you are going to see one different world. I mean, it's like you've been dropped in a completely different country. There's such a wide gap of beliefs that's really why I think that, like, if you go back and read that Guardian article that I just put the link to a minute ago where it was talking about Trump supporters, one of them was saying that they feel disenfranchised because the whole topic of conversation has been progressive talk in the media, whether we're talking about Black Lives Matter.
It's been ad hominem argument. No, It's not even been progressive talk. They're not even talking about issues. They're basically just trying to tear each other apart. You have small hands. You have a small dick. You have this.
What she was saying is that Trump is actually having a different viewpoint than the whole zeitgeist, what that's been over the last 4 years, whether it be Black Lives Matter or it be gay marriage or whatever. So somebody's actually standing up and having a strong voice in a conservative form for once that people are listening.
But Donald Trump isn't even that conservative. If you know anything about his history, he's not even that conservative.
You can debate it. Yes, I know. But what I'm saying is that's what that person feels. Now, I feel like...
Steven, what do you think?
Part of me as somebody that's looking toward voting for him and supporting him, I'm really paying attention to these articles. I'm watching the debate because, I mean, I don't want to just go off of feeling here. I want to make sure that when I put my name on that ballot, that I'm voting for the person that I absolutely have done my research. It's just like you might want to buy a car, and the manufacturer in the past was horrible, but their latest model that they came out with is fantastic, and they changed, but it still might be a lemon. You got to do your research ahead of time, and that's kind of the way I feel right now with the political race. I have to really, I want somebody in there that's going to make a difference. I don't want the typical politician. I think maybe that's why I'm leaning more toward Donald Trump.
That's what I was trying to say earlier is I can't really support Trump fully right now because I don't even know what he stands for.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you said something, Walt. You said he really hasn't addressed any policy. He just keeps going back to, I'm going to build a wall, and they're going to pay for it. You watch. Now it's going to be 10 feet higher.
The only thing,
I don't know.
Bernie Sanders talks about things that can't be implemented, that won't be implemented. The handshake across the aisle and the trust to get
it'll be implemented. It's going to cost you and I.
Well, and that's the thing. So when you look at it, you say, okay, after World War II, what happened? After World War II, they created a tax situation where large companies in this country and wealthy in this country were taxed heavily, which supported the development and infrastructure for the middle class. And that grew. Then what happened was the middle class started to really prosper and do well. So they started taxing the middle class to take care of the poor. Then subsidies came into this country for the rich and for big corporations, and there was far less tax coming from them, while the middle class seemed to get taxed more. Now, a lot of economists will tell you a middle class thing is a construct. It doesn't exist in any real society. We either have poor people or we have rich people. We can have degrees of each, but maybe we need to think about things differently here, because 2/3 of the planet live worse than the homeless people in the United States.
Well, that's what I was going to say here. Let's put this out there, and I think we all on this panel can agree. We all say that the government needs to start keeping their hands out of people's business. Like the government, I think, has too much control already. Like, why was the whole gay marriage thing such a drawn out, controversial thing? Listen, if whether I agree with it or not,
Exactly.
okay, whether I agree with it or not, people have the right to choose. Listen, the same way with drugs. I say, and this is going to come as a shock. People are going to be like, "What?" I say legalize them all. If people want to kill themselves and do drugs, listen, that gets rid of the mafia. That gets rid of all this drug cartel thing. If you make all this stuff legal, like, I don't understand the point. Like, why does the government have to get in and regulate all this?
Well, I don't know. You might be right, Stephen. I have not researched.
I don't know if I'm right. Yeah. I'm just throwing it out there. Like,
I have not researched this stuff enough, and obviously nobody really has out there. But what I'm saying is, we know that tar is not the best material to put a roof up with or to put in a street. Why the heck are we still using it? And if we can't,
because the government regulated that. The government said that that's what we're going to use is tar to do our roofs and our driveways.
But if we can't make decisions on little things like that affect health and benefit us and all that kind of stuff, how are we going to really agree to things on a grand scale? We don't agree on what the problems are. How can we agree what the solutions are?
So the question I have is, what is the origin of this trust gap, of this inability for the government to do anything, for this sense that we need to go out way outside of
back when the Constitution was written, Shelton. That's why it was written.
You're saying the disconnect is what you're saying, right?
Oh, yeah, the disconnect.
What happened? What has happened? What's the disconnect between the populace and the government to such an extent now that we feel as though only a truth talker who has zero government experience can now be president? How did that happen?
I think
16 years.
The whole technology boom. No. The technology boom brought it in. People just don't care.
16 years between the nexus between what happened with 9/11, okay, all of the wars that we've been involved with, we're war weary right now. And then on top of that, the transparency that's wanted because of the internet and the access to information that we have. So all of that amalgamation or that nexus of all these events has really created a distrust and disconnect. And basically, when you go to the DMV, that's what you're seeing is your government. Like, do you really want them
involved?
With that.
I want to ask. I want to ask the politicians all one simple question. The Washington Post, in an article 4 days ago, said that in a poll, almost 50% of all Americans said if they were to get an unexpected bill for $400, medical bill or car repayment or whatever, they would be unable to take care of that commitment without either going into debt or having to sell an asset. 50% of Americans couldn't cover a $400 unexpected bill. And
that's not good.
Now, if you want to look at the 1930s, which were, what did we call the 1930s, folks?
The Great
Depression.
Yep.
So what did people do? They took in boarders to help pay the bills. What the fuck is Airbnb?
Mm-hmm.
People took part-time jobs. What is things like Uber and Lyft and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
You look at what we're looking at now as disruptive tools or anything like that, and essentially we've just got layers and layers of jargon that aren't allowing us to look at the fact that no, things are not in a great place. And every time I bring this up, whether it's on Blab or wherever the heck it is, all people want to say to me is, "You're Mr. Negative," and they want to listen to the life coaches and all the people out there, that are selling the books. And
but JS, you're right. You're speaking the truth.
Yeah.
JS, you're right. I just don't know what the solution or the answer is.
Well,
I think
think about this also. What did we have? We had the great the big deal. The
New Deal.
The
New Deal. Thank you very much. Could you picture people now, especially white collar workers, getting up, leaving their homes, going 1,000 miles to build bridges, to build roads, to do things like that? Which is what essentially people did in the Depression.
Yeah, people moving to North Dakota to go to the oil wells right now because they can't find a job elsewhere. So,
people are living off the grid more and more.
Blab finding life coaches. That's what I want.
More and more people are going to remote locations, like in Colorado. They're moving to Alaska to live off, homesteads and live off the grid because they can't afford to live like this. I mean, people are just so sick and tired of everything. And I think we can all agree, I think, on this. There has to be a change. There has to be something in one of these candidates that's got to bring change, or we're going to be in some serious trouble.
I don't think that we can look towards. I don't think that there's any politician that's going to solve our problems. I think that what's going to happen here is the government's going to make itself obsolete before too long anyway, because technology is the only thing that can change our lives and directly affect us quickly.
The First Continental Congress was kind of genteel, but they did set the groundwork. The Second Continental Congress, these were gun-toting mothers. Most of them. I mean, there were only 2 lawyers in that whole thing. You start talking about politics. How did politics wind up being nothing but lawyers become politicians? But the Second Continental Congress, we had a coppersmith, we had a blacksmith, we had a bootmaker, we had a map maker, we had it was a wide variety of individuals. We had farmers, we had cotton, and they were poor and they were rich and all that. Most of them were a little bit wealthy, but not to the extent we have now, where what do you have to have like $1 billion now to get elected president?
Well, the question I have, or the observation question, is all this a reaction to the creeping plutocracy that we live in? That we're not really a republic anymore, and so maybe in a weird way, this is people feel the only way to get enfranchised again is to rebel, not through arms but through the vote, and vote for people that they know who will. That claims at least to be independent of the plutocracy.
If you want my opinion,
before you answer that, I have to roll. Shelton, I appreciate you having me on here.
Yes, sir.
I guess I'm
doing a giveaway,
so I can tell you why I need to get myself that Skype TX thing that you're going to give me.
So we're not giving Skype TX away tonight. We're giving $1,600 worth of software away tonight. So if you're interested, Shelton, I know you got this going on, but if you want to come over. 7:30. We're starting it.
Shelton,
Wirecast
up
and
John
ScreenFlow.
because he's one of the judges.
Okay.
All right.
So.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.
All right, guys.
Thanks, man.
So.
Okay. So what?
My opinion is we've always been a plutocracy to a certain extent. The thing about this is what we used to have was called a responsibility of the wealthy. So if you look at like 1968 or 1969, the average CEO in the United States made, I believe it was 16 times what their average worker would make. Now it's like 450 times what their average worker makes. So if you have a government that is run by the wealthy and the wealthy are responsible, that's one thing. If the wealthy care, because you can look and you can say, well, who? Yes, Warren Buffett and certainly there are other people in this country who are wealthy who care, but there's just not enough of them, and they're not in the right places.
And
so
they're not putting their money back in the country, like Warren Buffett is, giving to big world problems instead of like feeding America. I mean, come on.
Well, he's doing a lot of everything, and a lot of the big world problems. It's hard to say that we're not all interrelated or connected, because you look at something simple like the economic issues in Greece and how that's impacted many other countries.
Yeah, no, I'm not debating that at all.
Okay, guys, I'm going to hit stop record. Thank you very much for.
Oh, that's on recording, huh? Wow. You got me talking. I didn't realize it was being recorded.
I told.
But
Sorry.